Hey everybody, how's it going? Hopefully y'all are having a great day. In today's video, I wanted to discuss what I feel is a largely underrepresented couple topics when discussing personal finance and just in general money. A lot of content nowadays I think is produced with the sole focus of providing content on what can I do now, or basically quick fixes. You know, if you were to think about it in the dietary realm, it's the take this pill and lose 50 pounds over 2 weeks and have the dream body that you want. And all you got to do is just take this pill. And I think that really does a disservice to the complexity that is money, the complexity that is personal finance, and can often lead to, I think, a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of misconceptions, and ultimately a society that I would think is not really any better by hearing the material. If anything, it kind of becomes commonplace, like very overused topics that end up losing their value. And they are important topics, don't get me wrong, but I think when presented those topics without the sound foundation of understanding, I think that it does fall short and it doesn't really serve its purpose. And with that being said, I just want to get into it. So oftentimes a lot of content is made around like how to make money, right? What do you do when, the money that you have isn't enough? And that's important, right? There is standard cost of living. There is like a threshold that I would say the average American needs to hit, depending on their area, in order to make ends meet. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? If you don't make enough money to make rent, food, all that stuff, then you need to increase your income stream, right? So in that regard, I think that it's important for people to consume media that teaches you how to increase your income, right? You think about all the people who are like advertising their dropshipping course or whatever the case may be, and I do think that's important to an extent. But once you get your income past that minimum threshold and beyond, I think that there's a largely unrepresented conversation around that, right? So there are two ways that I think people should really start to conceptualize wealth, right? And that is one's ability to create wealth or create income, and one's ability to preserve their income or preserve wealth, right? And these are two totally different skill sets, right? I historically have not felt that I was, at least by today's definition, a wildly talented creator of income. I make good money, but I do it the old-fashioned way. I'm not doing some online e-commerce store. I'm not starting a tech company, none of those things. And in a society that puts out a lot of content based around that, I kind of felt like, I don't know if I have a voice on the internet, right? Like, I don't really fit into that mold, but I do, like this other side of money, right? But once I learned this and I started to really appreciate it, I realized, hey, I have developed myself, or I would call myself, average to maybe slightly above average in creating income. I would, humbly speaking, consider myself in the upper percentiles of preserving income, right? And understanding the art that is, preserving income, but also understanding what money means to me. And in that understanding, I'm able to have a stronger grasp and a stronger motivation to managing my personal finance. And this is something that I really hope that everyone learns at some point to some degree, so that when they do generate more income, it can actually mean something to them, right? So I wanted to share a quote. It says, "Having a strong sense of controlling one's life is a more dependable predictor of positive feelings of well-being than any of the objective conditions of life we have considered." And this is a quote by Angus Campbell, and he was a psychologist over at the University of Michigan. And he wrote this book kind of discussing happiness and a sense of well-being in America. And this is, very profound. If you think about the implications of the quote, right? So it's saying that among all other things, right? Having fast cars, eating fine meals, whatever the case is, right? Whatever you would classify as oh, that's what wealthy people do, or, oh, that's what I would do if I had all that money. more than anything else, it's the ability for one to have a sense of control over one's life. And that's massive, right? It kind of, it really opens the door for, I know the 4-Hour Work Week talks about this, like the new rich, or the NR, which is basically saying, hey, we need to redefine what we consider financial freedom. It really lends credence to that, in my opinion, of like, money is only as good as it provides you the sense of control over your own life. And it kind of streamlines into this other quote that I wanted to bring up, was that money's greatest intrinsic value, and this cannot be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time. And that is a quote from Morgan Housel in the book, The Psychology of Money, which I am currently reading. It's so wild to think that you have to really understand yourself, and you have to understand what money does in your life and the type of life that you want to live, right? It's also very empowering, because increasing one's own like earning capacity does not necessarily mean that it's going to increase one's sense of well-being or feeling of self-control, right? Because if you don't have the ability to say, hey, I know myself, enough's enough, this is the life that I want to live, and any money that I make in excess of that, I can save, or I can, reallocate accordingly. If you don't possess that skill set, and the standard of living, or the goalposts, if you will, continue to shift with increases in income, or increases in that creating power of income, you're no better than where you were if you didn't start making that money at all, right? Pretty much anything beyond the point of like minimum necessity to live is wasted, because one does not possess the skill set to keep the goalposts stationary, but let their income increase, right? So that being said, I do think that there are very undervalued skill sets. And I do think that, as a generalization, people nowadays don't really have these skill sets fine-tuned enough, in my opinion, right? Not to say that people who have these skill sets are going to inherently amass wealth, but they will have a proclivity to it, right? In the same way that I wouldn't say a very flexible person is naturally going to just like be an insane athlete, whatever they do, but flexibility helps pretty much in all sport, right? I believe it was George St. Pierre who said, if you took one athlete and applied it to the next sport over, gymnasts would naturally be the best athlete at the next sport over. And that's just because gymnastics as a whole develops very good core strength. It develops everything evenly. And if you were to take that to the next sport, it's not to say that they would be inherently good at basketball, but they possess skill sets that give them a proclivity to be better in the next sport over. So what are these 3 skill sets? First off, I want to, by the way, if it looks like I'm like glancing over, it's because I actually wrote a prompt for this, and I don't usually write anything for my videos. I just kind of like wing it, but this was so important that I really wanted to write things down. So the first skill of 3, in my opinion, and not to say that there isn't more, but these are just really like what I think are, the cornerstones, is developing your ability to have consistent discipline, right? Now, consistent discipline is the key. It doesn't matter if you can like do something for a month, 2 months, whatever. You have to be able to do it through all seasons, through the ups, through the downs, everything. You have to be consistently disciplined. And I think that that's very hard nowadays for a lot of people, because it's a skill that not really many people work on, right? Get up early, right? Like, just try that, See if you can get up early consistently for just try a half year, right? Just practice your consistent discipline, right? It's cold. I don't want to get out of bed right now, but I'm going to get out of bed right now. Why? Because I told myself I was going to do it, right? Read a book, and I'm not even speaking about this from like the summit of like, oh, I used to read 8 pages or 8 books, every single month or whatever, right? Like, I recently started reading, right? This is not something that I've been doing for my whole life. I literally just like picked up reading like maybe about a year ago. And it's hugely improved my life, right? Not only has it introduced a lot of new concepts, but it's introduced this component that like I can still learn. I can still like consistently introduce new ideas to myself and really think about them. And, you know, from I think it's the 5 Rings, Miyamoto Musashi, I believe his name is, but it's, if you understand the way broadly, it applies to all things or something to that effect. But really what the essence of the quote was is like, understand you're learning at a broad base and understand like the foundations of it. And you can really apply that to multiple areas, which exponentially increases like the efficacy of your learning. But that's a little tangent on reading. But in general, just do things you don't want to do, right? Because that's going to be like anything worth your time probably isn't going to be the most fun, right? Yeah, you could buy those diet pills, or you could just consistently monitor how much calories you're intaking, right? Stick yourself to a diet, right? These are things that are not fun in the moment, but over time, you will see the benefit and you'll be able to, you know, kind of get a little bit more behind it. But you have to develop that consistency to do the thing that you know you need to do when you don't want to do it, right? Again, not to say that anybody who gets up early or reads books or, you know, eats salads or drinks kale smoothies, I don't know. Not to say that they're all going to be wealthy, but they just possess the skill sets that I think naturally translate to the self-discipline that is required to generate wealth. Again, this is like a metaphorical like muscle. You need to work it out, right? And it may seem so insignificant, like, oh, I'm just like turning the cold water all the way to the left, you know, and, you know, standing in it for 100 seconds every single day, 7 days a week, no fail, right? Like it may seem insignificant, like how is that really going to apply to personal finance? But it's developing that muscle. So number 1, developing consistent discipline, I think is a very important thing. Number 2 is practicing delayed gratification. Now, this example everyone's heard, right? It's the marshmallow example that every kid is taught, right? I'll give you 1 marshmallow now, or if you wait, I'll give you 2 marshmallows later. And if you're watching this video, I mean, I take it a majority of you are probably going to say, oh, I'll just wait for the second or I'll wait for later and I'll get 2 marshmallows instead. 100% increase to my marshmallow consumption. But how later will you wait? Like that's to me the question, right? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, a day, right? How long until that 100% increase is no longer within your bandwidth of waiting, right? Your delayed gratification attention span. Because at a certain point, it's not there. And then you're going to default to just, all right, screw it. I'll just take the marshmallow, right? And the same way, if dieting, maybe you don't get the results that you want within 6 months, a year. And you're like, you know what, screw it. I'm not going to diet anymore, right? Your attention span for that delayed gratification runs out at that period. That is the muscle that you also need to work out as well, right? Like the longer and longer you can get that attention span, the better your life is going to be. Like all your endeavors are going to last longer, be consistent. You don't achieve goals in short spurts of like intensity and then let it fade away, right? It is over time, you have to just keep trying, right? You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, but the aggregate value is going to be in the upward direction, right? You have to have confidence in that. You have to have faith in that. And then you need to just practice your consistent discipline, do it, right? Without being able to practice that delayed gratification and extend that window as well from an investing context, you're not going to be able to take advantage of compounding interest. And compounding interest is just such a unfathomable idea, right? Warren Buffett, I forget what year, I think it was 2019, was worth $81.7 billion. 81.4 of that 81.7 billion was obtained after he hit the age 50. That's mind-blowing. He started at the age of 10. So within the first 40 years, he amassed 300 million, and the rest of the wealth was generated after age 50. Like, that's the power of compounding interest. Another example, if you were to take a chessboard, it has 64 squares. You put a single grain of rice in square number 1. The next square you go to, you now put 2 grains. And the next square over, you now put 4 grains. And you double that every single square. The amount of rice that it would take to fill it is unfathomable, right? I believe it was something like it would cover like an entire, I think it was India that they used as the continent, but in 3 meters worth of rice. That's how much rice it would take for you to fill effectively the 64th square. Insane, right? Like, people are not designed to understand compounding interest. People can understand linear growth perfectly fine, but this concept that like you can spend so long, 40 years even, amassing an amount that will only be just an absolute drop in the overall bucket in half, maybe even a quarter of the time. That like it just doesn't process for people. But anyways, you can't take advantage of that. What Albert Einstein calls the 8th wonder of the world. You can't take advantage of that if your attention span for delayed gratification is short. You have to develop that muscle. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's going to increase the quality of many things in your life. One of them being your own personal finance. And then finally, I think taking time to know yourself and this ability to really isolate key components of like you, right? What matters to you? Why are you watching this video? Who are you watching it for? How much is too much, right? Why do you want wealth? Who are you trying to impress? You know, like you have to like know yourself intimately. You have to know what matters to you. Otherwise, you're going to be that person that constantly is moving the goalpost, right? If you don't understand, hey, this is what it takes in life to make me happy. These are the people that matter in my life. The rest is extra, right? Like without understanding that, you're doomed to constantly be in the cycle of exchanging your time for money. And that's not something that you want to be kind of stuck, right? Read books on that, you know, like, again, I mean, I actually did a review on this, so feel free to go watch that video, but even just reading the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Beginning with the end in mind is one of the habits that is it runs in tandem with this topic of like taking time to get to know yourself. Like, it's going to be hard, right? Like, it's not easy. You have to conceptually understand that like money, civilizations have been built around money, right? We have been bartering, we have been trading for goods and services for as far back as history can remember, right? Like, think 8 hours of the 24 that you have in a day, you are exchanging your energy for money. For what? To spend that, right? To do whatever with that, right? Whatever you think is the purpose of those 8 hours, that, right? To devote so much life energy to it and not read a single book or not take an hour every week, an hour every month, an hour every year to understand what all of this means to you, I think is very naive, right? I don't think you can hope to have any sort of scalability with your earning potential to your preservation potential, right? So you can do this by reading. You can do this by, I personally have conversations with people, right? Like, I use it as a talking point to talk to people who are a lot older than me, who have seen more, who have been through life, who have experienced the highs and lows, right? Ask them, right? But the other thing too is like, don't go out in search of learning about money to learn how to make money, right? That skill will come, right? You can watch hundreds of thousands of videos online on how to do it if it doesn't come, right? But truly understand from other people's perspective what money did to their life, right? Was it good? Was it bad? Did they enjoy the effects? Did they not enjoy the effects? Did it provide them more comfort? Did it provide them less comfort? Like, you have to understand that money is not this one-dimensional thing that I get money I see things that I want and I put that money towards that thing. I exchange that. So effectively the exchange is time for money, money for thing, which ultimately correlates to like my time for things, right? And that's how a majority of people think about money. But if you really want to generate wealth and ultimately increase your capacity to have the ability to make decisions on how to control your own life, you can't think about it in that 1-to-1 ratio, right? There has to be some different conceptualizations of it, right? If you talk to older people, ask them, like, what was so significant? Like, when did your life change? Or like, ask them if they have any regrets. Ask them what their best decisions were. There's a book that I want to read. It's called like, it's like 30 Tips for the Living or something like that. But it's basically a book that interviews a bunch of older people and asks them, what are your regrets? What do you like? Really, the conversations that I like having with older people in a book. So I haven't read that yet. I'm very excited to read it. I actually bought it today. So I'll let you all know how it goes. But you really have to understand yourself in that capacity. I don't think that there's really any other way around it. You have to really understand what's the point of it all. Because if you don't have a point, if you're just amassing it to amass it, at some point, that delayed gratification attention span is going to snap, and you're not gonna do it anymore. But if you have an end in mind, right? Like if you begin with the end in mind, which is 7 habits, you understand what the goal is. You understand what the stationary goalposts are for that free life, whatever that may be for you. You know what you're working towards. You know how much you need to save. You know how much room for error you need to accommodate for, and it becomes easier. But again, that's hard work. You have to devote time to it, right? And being afraid of it is not a good excuse to not do it, right? Everyone's scared. Everyone thinks that they're behind, right? I think I'm behind, but if you line it up with any metrics, I'm not behind, but I conceptually feel like I'm behind. But that's no reason not to read. That's no reason not to try. That's no reason not to talk to people, right? This is all like, time is your most valuable asset. This is all important. You have to do this. You have to take time to do it. If generating wealth and building wealth and having that ultimate, goal of financial freedom is important to you. If it's not, continue life as normal. Do your thing. Do what makes you happy, right? But you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? I think Ryan Caraveo made a song. It's like, talking about your goal every day doesn't count as dedication, right? And you can't do that. You can't just say like, oh yeah, like I really should do my IRA, or oh man, I really should like get my finances in order, but then never commit to it, right? Like you have to do it. You just have to do it, right? It's scary. Trust me, I know. That's why I'm making videos, right? Like my hope is that the fear that I went through and like the anxiety that I felt, I hope to alleviate that for you all, right? I hope that, you have the confidence to put in the comment section, or even just message me like, hey, this. Like, I would love an ear to listen to, or I love an ear to listen to me, right? I'm there for you, right? I'm happy to do it. This is a scary journey that I really hope that everybody embarks on at some point, and sooner rather than later, because like I said, compounding interest is crazy. And the more time you give it, the wilder and wilder it gets for you. And I really hope that whatever your dream is, whatever your goal is, you develop these skill sets. You can take advantage of that time horizon for compounding interest, and whatever it is, it happens for you. Because why not? You only get one shot at this whole thing. So, do with it what you can and make the best of the situation. So anyways, hope this video helps. Again, there's more skills that I think are important, but I think by far these are at least the first 3 that I practiced before I started really, doing anything. But yeah, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section, message me, whatever. I'm here to help. Anyways, have a good day.